"Hey, sweetheart, you look a little lost. The library is about 5 miles that way." The voice was gravel over asphalt, thick with the kind of smoke that settled in the lungs and never left. Kaylee Beck didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She sat on the cracked red vinyl of the bar stool, her posture perfectly upright but relaxed, her hands wrapped loosely around a glass of soda water with a lime wedge balancing precariously on the rim. The condensation on the glass was the only thing moving, sliding down in slow, weeping trails to the coaster beneath. Kaylee took a slow breath, inhaling the scent of stale beer, lemon floor cleaner, and the overwhelming musk of the man standing too close to her right shoulder. She was wearing a royal blue top, the fabric soft and unassuming, draped over shoulders that looked slender in the dim amber lighting of the rusted sprocket. Her long blonde hair cascaded down her back, catching the flicker of the neon beer sign buzzing against the far wall. To the untrained eye, she looked like a college student who had taken a wrong turn on the way to a study group, or perhaps a suburban mom trying to recapture a fleeting moment of youth in a place she didn't understand. To the man looming over her, she looked like prey. He was massive, a mountain of leather and denim with a beard that reached his chest. A patch on his vest declared him the sergeant-at-arms of the Iron Vipers, a local motorcycle club that treated this particular dive bar as their living room, boardroom, and interrogation chamber. "I'm not lost," Kaylee said. Her voice was soft, melodic, but it lacked the tremble of fear he was expecting. It was a flat fact, delivered with the indifference of someone reading a weather report. She turned her head slightly, her blue eyes meeting his dark, bloodshot gaze. "I'm just having a drink." The big biker, whose road name was Piston, chuckled. The sound rumbled deep in his chest. He looked back at his table where 4 other men sat, nursing dark beers and watching the interaction with predatory grins. Piston turned back to her, leaning his forearm on the bar, effectively boxing her in against the counter. "Soda water ain't a drink, darlin'," Piston said, leaning closer. "It's a waste of a bar stool. See, my boys and I, we've got a long ride ahead of us tomorrow. We like to stretch out, and this particular stool is where I like to put my helmet." Kaylee looked at the empty bar. There were a dozen other stools. There were 4 empty booths. The place was a graveyard on a Tuesday night, save for the Vipers and an old man in the corner nursing a whiskey. "There's plenty of room," Kaylee said, turning back to her glass. She picked it up, taking a measured sip. Her hand was steady, rock steady. "It's about respect," Piston said, his voice dropping an octave, losing the mock friendliness. "You walk into our house, you sit in the big chair. You don't offer to buy a round. It's rude. And I don't think you want to be rude to me, do you? A pretty little thing like you." The bartender, a wiry man named Al who had owned the place for 30 years, scrubbed a glass vigorously with a rag. He kept his eyes down, but his knuckles were white. He knew the Vipers. He knew that if he intervened, they would wreck the place, or worse, wait for him in the parking lot at closing. But he looked at the woman, Kaylee, and felt a knot of sickness in his stomach. She looked too clean, too innocent for this. "Piston, come on," Al muttered, not looking up. "She's just a customer. Let her be." "Shut it, Al," Piston snapped without looking away from Kaylee. "I'm having a conversation with the lady. We're getting to know each other." He reached out, his thick, grease-stained fingers hovering near the sleeve of her blue top. "That's a nice color. Royal blue. Matches your eyes. Expensive fabric, too. You certainly aren't from around here." Kaylee shifted. It was a subtle movement, a slight redistribution of weight on the stool. Her boots, sturdy and laced tight, found purchase on the brass rail. "Please don't touch me," she said. The volume of the bar seemed to drop. The jukebox in the corner, playing a low classic rock track, seemed to fade into the background noise of the refrigerator humming. Piston froze, his hand inches from her arm. He smiled, but it was a jagged, ugly thing. "Or what? You gonna call your boyfriend? You gonna scream?" "I'm going to ask you politely to return to your table," Kaylee said. She set the glass down. "I have had a very long week. I am tired. I just want to finish my water and wait for my ride." "Oh, her ride," one of the bikers at the table called out. "Is Daddy coming to pick her up?" Laughter erupted from the table. Piston, emboldened by the audience, closed the gap. He pressed his chest against her shoulder, the smell of leather and unwashed body overpowering. "I think you should move, now." Kaylee closed her eyes for a second. In the darkness behind her lids, she didn't see the sticky bar counter or the looming biker. She saw a wire, a red wire, no thicker than a strand of spaghetti, buried inside a tangle of rusted metal and plastic casing in the baking heat of a Helmand province marketplace. She felt the sweat trickling down her spine under 50 pounds of Kevlar, the sound of her own heart hammering in her ears, the absolute, crystalline silence of the world waiting for her to make a mistake. She remembered the steady voice in her earpiece, the trust of the men forming a perimeter around her, the knowledge that if her hand shook even a millimeter, she and her brothers would be pink mist. She opened her eyes. The fear Piston wanted to see wasn't there. Instead, there was a void, a calm, chilling emptiness that usually only existed in the eyes of people who had seen the other side of mortality and decided to come back. "I'm not moving," she said. Piston's face reddened. His ego was on the line now. He couldn't let a 90-pound slip of a girl in a blue shirt disrespect him in front of his brothers. He reached out and grabbed her upper arm. His grip was hard, meant to bruise. "Listen here, you little." Kaylee didn't strike him. She didn't throw a punch or break his nose. She simply moved. It was a shrug, a roll of the shoulder combined with a subtle twist of her torso that broke his grip instantly, using the mechanics of his own thumb against him. It was efficient, minimal, and confusingly fast. Piston stumbled back a half step, looking at his hand as if it had betrayed him. "You," I said. "Don't touch me," Kaylee repeated. Her voice hadn't raised a decibel. At the corner table, the old man watching nursing his whiskey froze. He had been watching the scene with a mixture of pity and anxiety, contemplating calling the cops, though he knew the cops took 20 minutes to get out this far. But when he saw that move, the economy of motion, the rotational brake, he sat up straighter. He squinted through the gloom. He looked at the woman's wrist. As her sleeve had ridden up during the brief scuffle, he caught a flash of silver. A bracelet, not jewelry. It was a heavy stainless steel band, the kind worn to remember brothers lost. And on her other wrist, partially obscured by a watch, he saw a tattoo. It was small, just a silhouette of a crab. The old man, a Vietnam vet named Miller who had spent his youth in the Brownwater Navy, felt a jolt of electricity. He knew that crab. It wasn't a zodiac sign. It was the mark of the explosive ordnance disposal, the bomb squad. And if she was wearing that, and sitting the way she was sitting, Miller pulled his phone from his pocket. He didn't dial 911. He dialed a number he had saved from a contracting job he'd done on the base 3 towns over, a direct line to the quarterdeck of the Naval Special Warfare Group Support Unit. "Yeah," Miller whispered into the phone, his eyes glued to the confrontation escalating at the bar. "Yeah, this is Miller. I'm at the Rusty Anchor off Route 9. Listen, you got any personnel missing? Specifically a blonde woman, maybe 5'5", EOD tech? Yeah, and she's about to be in a world of hurt, or she's about to put some bikers in the hospital, and I don't think she wants to do the paperwork. You might want to get some boys down here, fast." Back at the bar, Piston had recovered from his surprise. Anger had taken over. He signaled the table. 4 chairs scraped against the wooden floor. The other bikers stood up, hitching their pants, cracking knuckles. They were a wall of denim and menace, slowly advancing to encircle the bar stool. "You made a mistake, sweetheart," Piston snarled. "We were just gonna kick you out. Now we're gonna teach you some manners." Kaylee swiveled on the stool to face them. She didn't stand up. Standing up would be an aggressive act. Sitting showed she was still de-escalating, still in control. She scanned them. 5 targets. No weapons drawn yet, but they likely carried knives. The one on the left had a heavy chain wallet that could be used as a flail. The one on the right was favoring his left knee, an old injury, a weakness. "Gentlemen," Kaylee said, the words sounding strange in the dirty air, "this isn't necessary. You want the stool? Take the stool, but let me leave." "Too late for leaving," the biker with the chain said, stepping up beside Piston. "We need an apology. On your knees." Kaylee sighed. It was a sound of profound disappointment. "I can't do that." "Make her," Piston ordered. The biker on the right lunged. It was a clumsy grab, fueled by alcohol and overconfidence. Kaylee dropped off the stool, slipping under his arm. She didn't hit him. She guided him. A palm to the back of his elbow, a subtle trip with her foot, and the biker crashed face first into the bar counter with a sickening thud. She stepped back into the open space of the floor, putting the bar between her and the wall. Hands open, palms out. "Stay back." The room went silent again, save for the groan of the man peeling his face off the mahogany. Piston stared at his friend, then at Kaylee. His face went purple. "Get her." They rushed her. It was a chaotic brawl, or it would have been if Kaylee had been anyone else. But Kaylee Beck wasn't just anyone. She was a Senior Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy. She was a Master EOD technician. She had cleared roads in Fallujah, dismantled IEDs in the Arghandab River Valley while taking fire, and served as the primary explosive expert attached to SEAL Team 4 for 3 consecutive deployments. She had walked the long walk alone to defuse bombs designed to kill tanks. Drunk bikers were not a tactical problem. They were a geometry equation. She ducked a swinging fist, weaving inside the guard of the second attacker. She drove a palm into his solar plexus, doubling him over, then shoved him backward into Piston. She used the environment, keeping the pool table to her left to funnel them, ensuring they couldn't surround her. But there were too many of them, and she was holding back. She knew that if she truly unleashed, if she used the lethal strikes she had drilled for 15 years, she would kill one of them. And killing a civilian in a bar fight was a career ender, regardless of self-defense. She had to survive without maiming them, which was infinitely harder than just neutralizing the threat. A heavy boot caught her in the thigh, sending a jolt of pain up her leg. She stumbled, and Piston seized the opportunity. He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. "Gotcha now, you little witch," he screamed. Kaylee gritted her teeth, grabbing his wrist with both hands to relieve the tension on her scalp. She slammed her heel down onto his instep, hard. He howled but didn't let go. He swung his other fist, a haymaker aimed at her face. She blocked it with her forearm, but the force sent her reeling back against the jukebox. Glass shattered. The music skipped and died. "Hold her down," Piston roared. Two of the men grabbed her arms, pinning her against the silent machine. She struggled, kicking out, but the weight disparity was massive. She was trapped. Piston stepped in close, breathing heavy, blood from a split lip staining his beard. "You fight good," he wheezed, "but you're just a girl. Just a weak little girl." He raised his hand for a backhand slap, intending to humiliate her, to break that icy composure that infuriated him so much. Kaylee stared at him. She didn't beg. She didn't look away. She braced herself for the impact, calculating how to roll with it to minimize the damage. She was calculating the torque required to snap the finger of the man holding her right arm as soon as Piston struck. Then, a sound cut through the air. It wasn't a siren. It wasn't a shout. It was a low mechanical rumble that grew rapidly into a roar. Then another. Then 10 more. The sound of high-performance engines, synchronized and aggressive, vibrating the floorboards of the rusty anchor. Headlights swept across the front window, blindingly bright. Not the single beams of cruisers, but the high-lumen floodlights of tactical trucks and the sharp cutoffs of sport bikes. Tires screeched on the gravel outside. Doors slammed heavy, armored slams. The front door of the bar didn't just open, it was kicked inward with such force that the bell above it tore off the frame and clattered across the floor. Piston froze, his hand still raised. The two men holding Kaylee looked at the door. Standing in the frame was a silhouette that blocked out the floodlights. He was not as big as Piston in terms of fat and beer muscle, but he was built like a coiled spring. He wore plain clothes, cargo pants, a tight gray t-shirt, and a baseball cap pulled low. But the way he stood, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose but ready, screamed violence. Behind him, more shapes filled the doorway, men and women, some in riding gear, some in gym clothes, but all moving with a terrifying unity. The man in the front stepped into the light. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and eyes that looked like flint. He scanned the room in a single heartbeat, the bartender hiding, the old man in the corner, the overturned stools, and finally, the three men pinning the blonde woman against the jukebox. His eyes locked onto Piston's raised hand. "I'd put that hand down if you want to keep it," the newcomer said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made the air in the room feel heavy. Piston blinked, trying to process the interruption. "This is private club business. Get lost." The newcomer stepped forward. Then another man stepped in behind him. Then another. Within seconds, 12 people had filed into the small bar. They fanned out instantly, securing the exits, checking the corners, moving with a fluid professionalism that made the bikers look like clumsy children. "I don't care about your club," the leader said, walking steadily toward the jukebox. "I care about the senior chief you've got your hands on." Piston looked at Kaylee. "Senior, what?" "Let her go," the leader said. He was 10 feet away now. "Last warning, or what?" Piston challenged, though his voice wavered. "There's 5 of us, and there's 12 of us," a woman's voice came from the group. She stepped forward, wearing a flight suit with the top half tied around her waist. "And we're bored." Piston looked at his men. They were nervous. These newcomers didn't look like bikers. They looked like sharks. "Let her go," Piston muttered to his guys. The men released Kaylee's arms. She slumped slightly, shaking out her shoulders, then stood tall, smoothing the front of her royal blue top. She took a breath, composing herself, and looked at the man who had walked in first. "Took you long enough, Master Chief," Kaylee said, her voice dry. The leader, Master Chief Hutch Hutchinson, a SEAL team leader who had trusted Kaylee with his life on more operations than he could count, cracked a small smile. "Traffic on Route 9 was a nightmare, Kaylee. You okay?" "I had it handled," she said, brushing a stray hair from her face. "I know you did," Hutch replied, But we were in the neighborhood, Miller called. He nodded toward the old man in the corner, who raised his glass in a silent toast. Piston, realizing his dominance was evaporating, tried to salvage the situation. Look, she started it. She was disrespecting the Vipers. We run this town. Hutch turned his head slowly to look at Piston. The amusement was gone. You run this town. Buddy, you don't even run this room anymore. Who are you people? Piston demanded. Hutch didn't answer. He just looked at Kaylee. Senior Chief Beck, did these men assault you? Kaylee looked at Piston. She saw the fear creeping into his eyes. She saw the bully shrinking as soon as the odds weren't in his favor. They made a mistake, Kaylee said quietly. They thought being a woman meant I was a victim. They thought being alone meant I was weak. She stepped away from the jukebox, walking slowly toward Piston. The seals parted to let her through, watching her with reverence. This was the woman who had walked down a dusty alley in Yemen to disarm a pressure plate while they took cover. This was the woman who had pulled a wounded breacher out of a burning Humvee. Kaylee stopped a foot from Piston. She was a head shorter than him, but she looked down on him. You demanded an apology, she said. Piston swallowed hard. I don't want your apology, Kaylee said. I want you to understand something. You see these people? She gestured to the room, to the SEALs, the pilots, the support crew who had dropped everything at the base the moment the call came in. We hold ourselves to a standard. We protect those who can't protect themselves. You use your size to intimidate people. You use fear. She reached out and picked up her spilled purse from the floor. She dusted it off. That's not strength, she said, her voice cutting like a razor. That's cowardice dressed up in leather. Piston looked at the circle of operators. He saw the grim faces of men and women who had hunted terrorists in the darkest corners of the earth. He realized, with a sinking horror, that he had picked a fight with the pointy end of the spear. We're leaving, Piston mumbled. Come on, boys. Not yet, Hutch said, stepping in Piston's path. He didn't touch him. He just occupied the space. You broke the jukebox, and you spilled the lady's drink. Piston fumbled for his wallet. His hands were shaking. He pulled out a wad of cash, hundreds of dollars, and threw it on the bar. There, that covers it. We're going. Go, Hutch said. The Vipers scrambled for the door, tripping over themselves to get away from the silent, staring wall of military personnel. Piston was the last one out. He paused at the door, looking back at Kaylee. She hadn't turned to watch him leave. She was thanking the bartender. The roar of the motorcycles outside faded into the distance, much faster and more erratic than when they had arrived. The tension in the room broke. The SEALs relaxed, shoulders dropping, smiles appearing. You really can't go anywhere without starting a riot, can you, Beck? The woman in the flight suit teased, walking over to give Kaylee a side hug. I was drinking water, Kaylee protested, finally letting a smile touch her lips. Sparkling water, with a lime. Hutch walked over to the bar. He picked up the wad of cash Piston had left. He counted it, then tossed it to Al, the bartender. For the damages and a round for the house. Whatever the lady wants. Al looked at the money, then at Kaylee. I think the lady's drink is on the house for the rest of her life. Kaylee sat back down on the stool. Her legs were trembling slightly now, the adrenaline dump hitting her. It wasn't fear, it was just biology. She looked at her hands. For a second, the dive bar faded again. She was back in the sand. The memory wasn't a bad one this time. It was the moment after the blast, a controlled detonation she had set. The dust clearing, the thumbs up from the team leader on the ridge, the feeling of absolute competence, the knowledge that she was good at what she did, and that her gender didn't matter to the explosive, and it didn't matter to the men whose lives she saved. She looked up at Hutch, who was leaning on the bar next to her. You didn't have to come, she said quietly. I had it. We know, Hutch said. He tapped the counter. But family doesn't let family drink alone, especially in a dump like this. He turned to the group. All right, clear the door, let's get a table. Beck's buying the second round since she had all the fun. Laughter filled the room. The jukebox miraculously flickered back to life, skipping past the broken track to play something upbeat. Kaylee took a deep breath. She looked at the royal blue fabric of her sleeve, smoothed it out, and picked up a fresh glass of water Al placed in front of her. Thanks, Hutch, she whispered. Anytime, Senior, he replied. Anytime. Later that night, as the team was leaving, Kaylee stopped by the corner table. Miller, the old veteran, was still there. He nodded to her. Good to see the Brotherhood is still alive, Miller grunted. Sisterhood too, Kaylee corrected gently. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a coin. It was heavy, bronze, stamped with the crab of the EOD and the trident of the SEAL teams. A unit coin from a deployment that didn't officially exist. She set it on the table next to his whiskey. Thanks for the call, she said. Miller looked at the coin, his eyes widening. He looked up to thank her, but she was already walking out the door, flanked by giants, disappearing into the night where she belonged. The vipers never came back to the rusty anchor, and the story of the quiet blonde woman who commanded a legion of SEALs became a legend in the county, a warning whispered to anyone who thought they could judge a book by its cover or a warrior by her shirt. 2 weeks later at the base commissary, Kaylee was pushing a cart in the produce section. She turned the aisle and nearly collided with a man in a neck brace and a cast on his wrist. It was the biker who had tried to grab her first. He froze, his eyes going wide with recognition. He looked at her uniform, the khaki, the ribbons stacked high on her chest, the anchors on her collar, the gold warfare pin. He didn't puff up, he didn't sneer. He stepped back, pulling his cart out of the way, pressing himself against the shelf of canned peas to give her as much room as possible. "Ma'am," he stammered, looking at the floor. "Sorry." "Excuse me." Kaylee paused. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the shame, she saw the realization. "Watch your knee," she said simply. "You're favoring it. Get it checked out before it gives out on you." She didn't wait for a response. She pushed her cart past him, moving with the same quiet grace she had in the bar, the same grace she had in the minefield. The biker watched her go, then looked at his own reflection in the glass of the freezer door. He straightened up just a little bit and walked away with a lesson burned into his soul. True strength doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be ready. Don't forget to like and subscribe to She Chose Valor, to honor those who risk their lives for our freedom.